This video is on the history of the music business and technology in 2 acts. Act 1. Music is too easy to make.
Oh, hell yeah!
Frank Sinatra used to get up in front of an orchestra and sing a vocal take, and they had one microphone. And they would get it balanced just right. Frank would say, okay, I'm ready to do it, and he'd sing it.
Come fly with me, let's float down to Peru.
Fast forward to 1998 with Cher, the Believe song. They invented this thing, Auto-Tune. That I've talked about this a million times on here. But Auto-Tune was a plug-in that would go into these DAWs, digital audio workstations. So
Oh, these bloody digital audio workstations.
what you do is you take the vocal, let's say the song's in C major. Any note in the key of C major, it would tune the
Okay, we know all this, don't we?
note to. Well, T-Pain and people like that realized if you put it on a really hard tuning, it would make it sound like a keyboard. Well, then the same thing starts happening with drum parts. This would be a great take of this first verse if this one hi-hat wasn't a little dragged. Well, let's move it back a little bit, or let's move it forward. You know what? Let's just look at the grid lines, the bar lines, and we'll just move them to that. Then you start cutting out, moving them. Then they give you this tool called Beat Detective.
But this is all a good thing. Making music this way isn't like necessarily better, but it just gives it a different sound, you know?
Then it becomes like a drum machine. So it's not human-like.
Okay, I don't know if he's gonna say this, but no, that's not how you process drums. If you're processing a person playing drums, you don't quantize them exactly to the beat. Because you know, as a music producer, that doesn't if you're recording someone playing the drums, it completely defeats the object to then quantize them completely to the grid. It completely defeats the object of recording a live drummer. So why would you do that? The reason that you record a live drummer is because you want that live sound, and that live sound comes from the tiny little imperfections in the timing. So I don't know why you'd quantize something to the grid if you bothered to go and record someone live. I don't know why you would do that. Like maybe you'd take the odd hit and you'd move it a little bit if something was totally out, or if it wasn't like fitting in the mix very well. But there's so many things to consider when you're producing drums, specifically live recorded drums. He's really oversimplifying everything here.
Example of a quantized drum part. It's John Bonham's drum performance from Fool in the Rain that's a shuffle. Here's what it sounds like as a machine. Now here's the actual human performance of John Bonham. Notice the swing in it.
Is he saying that you can't, like, computers have no idea how to quantize something to a swing beat grid? Is he saying that computers don't know what swing is? What? Like, computers know what swing is? I was literally using it just now on Ableton.
Once you've quantized the drum part, it's a drum machine. It's just like Superior Drums.
I have that plugin.
What started happening in the year 2000 or so is that everyone started quantizing their drums because the budgets to hire session guys like Josh Freese and Kenny Aronoff went away, and you'd have to use the crappy drummers. I mean, some bands would have good enough drummers to play, but you typically have these crappy drummers that you'd have to fix their parts. And once you fix their parts, you start moving the bass around, you start moving the guitars around, and then you pretty much have sterile, generic, quantized rock.
Only if you're bad at producing music. Only if you're bad at it.
You don't need to have a good sounding room. You can have a crappy sounding room. You don't even need good mics because you're going to just replace everything with samples. Well, where do you think samples come from? They come from people that know how to record them.
To be fair, I do just use sample drums. I don't know, if I recorded a real drummer for my tracks, yeah, I think like maybe I'd come up with something more authentic sounding if I was going for that sound though. But I'm not necessarily going for something specifically authentic. Like that's just a specific sound that he's talking about. But you don't always want that specific sound in your production, do you? You don't always want something that sounds like loose and real. Back in this guy's day, that was what music sounded like, and it's changed a lot since then. But I think he is a little bit like he can't deal with the changing sound of music, and he's getting that mixed up with music being produced badly. It's not necessarily being produced badly. I think it's that people are just giving it a sound that he doesn't like.
Just use amp modelers. They plug into their computer, they pull up their program, everything is done for them. They've already been pre-mic'd, pre-selected. They're all using the same algorithms. They can create great sounds. They're so easy to use. Doesn't take any skill at all. Then, of course, you have the MIDI packs that you can buy if you can't play keyboards.
I will agree. The MIDI packs are fucking stupid and a rip-off.
Huh, what is this?
Like, literally, there's a good video by Tentacruel about this. If you want to know more about useless chord packs, it's like literally you're paying a ridiculous amount for literally a MIDI file, like C major and then like C sharp major, D major, when you could just literally take the notes in your DAW and just press up on your keypad and it would do that for you.
The creative dependency on technology limits the ability of people to innovate, I believe. Could be wrong about that. Maybe it helps them.
He is wrong about that. I do agree that the musical production landscape is changing and it's definitely involving more technology, but that doesn't mean it's necessarily making people less creative or it's like stifling them creatively. If anything, you can see I have many toys. Getting a new toy, some new buttons to like play around with, it inspires you creatively. But I doubt this guy sort of really knows what, you know, your average MIDI controller can do or what Ableton can do. Ableton can like manipulate MIDI in so many ways. Like it can humanize it, it can like randomize MIDI, it can manipulate it in so many ways because it's like so easy to think up of a new idea now that like sounds really good just from using all of this technology that you have. Yeah, it's changed because you're sort of like doing it digitally now with buttons and computers. As to whether you think that these aren't real instruments as opposed to a guitar or a bass, I would argue that no, these are all legitimate, real instruments. It's just that some of them are hooked up to computers and you can't deal with that, I think.
This is why these trap beats have been in vogue for the last 20 years. People they know they work, so they just keep using them all the time.
But is that not similar to like old style music? They found that the fucking 2-5-1 chord progression worked, so therefore everyone fucking used the 2-5-1 chord progression. Is that not the same thing? It's just someone was playing it on a guitar instead of punching it in on a drum machine. That's the only difference. People reuse things that work. Thing is though, like I get it. I'm like not that into all of the trap music personally, but thing is, you always have a bias against music that you don't personally like. And this guy obviously doesn't like trap music, which is fine. But don't say all of insert genre here that I don't like is the same. Of course you're going to think all of genre I don't like is the same because you don't listen to it and you don't appreciate it for all of its nuances because you're not interested in it. I respect trap as like a type of music that exists and people are interested in it, but I'm not going to sit here and be like, oh, it all sounds the same, all of this trap music. I think it all sounds the same, but I'm fully aware of the fact that that's because I'm not interested in it. So don't sit there and listen to it.
This is Spotify's way of using AI. They have AI songs, they attribute them to people that don't exist, and this allows them to take royalties that would go to musicians and keep them for themselves.
There's a theory that Spotify have never been able to find a business model that's profitable, basically. So they've gone through like loads of different ways to try and find ways to be profitable. They've tried podcasts and it didn't work, and they tried the stupid car thing. Do you see the car thing? And that didn't work either. They bricked all of them. They've tried a few different things and like Spotify still isn't profitable. So there's this theory that Spotify are generating their own AI background music and curating it all and regurgitating it all in background music playlists, but under fake artist names to make it all look like it's new and fresh. So then Spotify can basically keep all of the streaming money instead of actually giving it to actual artists, because they're not making money out of actually paying musicians for streaming. Lo-fi robot regurgitation to study and relax to. Exactly. Have Spotify tried selling drugs? They should at this point. Honestly, I think it's the only way that they're going to be profitable at this point is if they start selling crack.
All three major labels are suing AI startups for copyright infringement.
It's basically like how everyone's trying to sue AI startups at the minute for stealing absolutely everything.
By comparison, when I was a kid, if I wanted to buy this
Here
Led
we
Zeppelin
go. Here we go.
or borrow money from my parents to buy it because I wanted to own it. I wanted it to be in my collection. You actually had to expend energy riding your butt.
Thing is, though, that's why vinyl's had a resurgence recently, because people do appreciate that. Like, people do like consuming music from their favorite artists in this way. That's why vinyl has had a bit of a resurgence. Although it's going down a bit, I think it was a little bit of a fad. People are kind of moving past the vinyl fad because they've kind of realized that it's kind of expensive. I did have a record player for a little while, and then I sold all of my records, and I sold the record player because I didn't have room for it anymore. I guess the way I consume music now, though, I don't know, I think it's down to the genre that I listen to, though, because I mostly listen to house music. Like, at the minute, I'm very into like funky disco house. That's the kind of music that like you get a lot of YouTube DJs playing. So what I tend to do is I find that a DJ that I like on YouTube, and I will rag the shit out of them. I will just like I'll find a mix that I like, and I will just replay it and replay it. It's not like I listen to music that's been pushed to me by it's being pushed to me by a human, I guess, that I found that I like, which is nice. But I get that, like, if you're not really into sort of the kind of music that DJs play, you're probably being fed music by an algorithm on Spotify or something like that. I don't even have Spotify. I don't need it. I literally listen to music on YouTube. I find a DJ that I like, and I'm like, yep, you're good. Play me a mix. I can only really speak from my own experience. I don't know what it's like if you're, say, a Taylor Swift fan or something, or like, I can only speak from my own experience. I like to dig for tunes, but instead of looking through vinyl records, it's digging online, it's digging on the internet now. It's still not very easy to find. Those tunes that I listen to right now, they like fire something up in me that just fills me with absolute love, and they just make me want to like dance. It's not easy to find tunes like that. You still have to dig. You just have to like dig on the internet. Maybe it is on Spotify, or maybe it is just on YouTube. Maybe it is through finding a DJ that you like, but you still kind of have to dig. It's not rifling through record stores anymore. It's just, I don't know, I guess sitting at your computer, and I guess if you see that as, I don't know, ruining music, then I don't know what to say. I mean, it's just the way it is now. I would argue that music is more accessible now than it ever was to people who actually don't have the money to spend on vinyl records. Because if you have a YouTube account, then you can find so much cool music just on YouTube now. Like, all you need to do is pay for the broadband, and you can find a fuck ton of stuff that you probably love. That's like access to way more music for way cheaper, and it still involves some digging.
What Was On Here meant something. Produced by John Burns and Genesis.
I honestly just think that he's old, though. I understand why he doesn't like the way that music is now. I get it because of his age, but music does mean things to people still now. It's just in a different way. When I find a tune that I really like, it still means a lot to me. It's just that I don't physically hold it in my hand anymore, but I still remember the way that I found it. It was like through a specific DJ, or it was like through specifically like another artist or something. I still remember the way that I got there, the way that I got to that tune, and the way I still remember the way that I replayed it again and again and again and again and again. It still means a lot to me when I find something that I really like. It's just not in that physical way.
If you only have to pay $10.99 a month to have access to anything, what is one song worth?
That's not like the only way you can apply value to something, is through the amount of money you paid for it. I love how he's recording this video, I'm guessing in his home studio, with how many fucking guitars has he got there? 6, another 6, at least 18 guitars. How many fucking Marshall amps has he got back there? He's sat there rich as fuck, and he's complaining about the fact that kids don't have to pay to access music anymore.
Play just a few songs. Don't look at your phone, or as I call it, the thought deletion device, because it empties your mind out. Don't look at TikTok. Don't look at YouTube or Twitter. Don't look at Instagram. Just listen to the music. Let it flow over you. Think about the lyrics. Think about the melody. and try to experience music like you used to. Or if you're young, try to experience music in the way that we used to.
I've never really been much of like a lyric person, but what do you think everybody who like listens to Taylor Swift is doing, or everybody who listens to Billie Eilish? I'm pretty sure all of those people are experiencing music because by listening to it through the meaning of the lyrics. But I'm still, having an amazing visceral experience through listening to it, Mr. Beato. I don't need deep lyrics or anything. Your lyrics are often pretty deep. What, mine specifically? You mean my lyrics about Timothy Chalamet? Yeah, they are pretty deep, aren't they?
I want to address some of the comments and emails I've gotten in response to my last video, the real reason music is getting worse. When I have people on my channel like Matteo Mancuso or Mateus Asado.
Guys, these are real musicians because they're playing real instruments, okay? Actual strings and vibrations. These aren't buttons.
Or bassist Mohini Day. People rely on using technology to fix things or make up for the fact that they don't want to spend the time to get good at something. Whether it's playing an instrument, recording, or they just don't want to spend the years it takes to become good enough to record.
Because getting good at using a computer, guys, doesn't count. The hours that you spend learning how to use plugins, use synths, like soft synths, you just like learning how to mix your tracks good, that's all wasted time because you were looking at a screen instead of using, like a real instrument.
People don't care about music as much as they used to, and that's a big statement. Let's take a look at Google Trends. This actually measures actual search traffic on Google for specific topics. If I type in music...
No, he's not using this as proof.
In 2004, music was at 100%. And where is it now? It's down to 25%.
I wonder if it might be because now people know that they don't have to Google the word music to listen to music. That might be something to do with it. Is this guy like 300 years old? What's going on? He can't be serious.
What about other genres like hip hop? Oh, that's really bad.
Oh,
Maybe
God.
country music is doing better. I'll just search the United States because that's pretty much where people listen to country music. Well, country music's down 50%, but it's pretty steady after that. Well, what about art?
Doesn't that just say something about the kind of people who listen to country music? They're more likely to be sort of American boomers who don't know how to listen to music on anywhere other than searching for that kind of music on Google, possibly.
If they don't care about that, then what do they care about? Must be video games. No.
That's not how people find games anymore.
Social media, it's at its highest right now. Social media is what people are on. They're on TikTok, they're on Instagram, they're on YouTube Shorts, but practicing music or listening to music or looking up things about art or playing video games, they're not doing. Kids don't practice. They go to their lessons every week without ever having touched their instrument.
Is that supposed to be a new thing? Because that was always a thing. That was always a thing, that you would be sort of like given some instrument as a kid. You'd be like, right, this is what you play now. And then you'd be like, okay, cool. And then, but even though you had like no interest in that instrument whatsoever, and then you were expected to practice that instrument. Like maybe it's more of a thing because kids are distracted by social media now, but I don't think it's like less of an interest in music itself. It's that if you're sort of given a violin or a clarinet to practice at home while you're seeing all of these people on social media make loads of really cool music on like samplers and stuff. I mean, maybe it would make more sense to like give your kid a sampler than a clarinet because maybe they would be more interested in that. But I guess Rick Beato would say that that's not a real instrument. Technology has advanced so much in the space of just a few generations that most parents are not going to know what a chaos pad is, even though every kid who's like even slightly into music production would absolutely know what that is. Basically, the big problem is we've entered an era of just really rapid technological evolution. For the purposes of making music, I think it's been a good thing to make it more accessible to people and to allow people to make a wider variety of types of music for like whatever they're interested in. On the other side of that, it makes it harder for older generations to keep up with, quite simply. I think that's the only problem here, because there's that disconnect. When I was at primary school, I played a violin and I played clarinet. I really enjoyed the violin. I felt like I could really go a bit crazy on it. We used to hire them from the school. The parents didn't have to buy them. When I expressed an interest in learning the guitar instead, my dad did buy an electric guitar for me. A lot of kids don't have access to that kind of thing, but a lot of kids their parents don't have that much money to be able to spend on an instrument for their kid, and I'm privileged in that sense. You can get a cheap MIDI controller and some software for even cheaper than that now. For something kind of decent, you can get it for £100, which a lot of families don't have access to that kind of money, but you could argue that access to making music overall has got a lot cheaper than what it used to be back in my day. But yeah, you can get a cheap Akai little drum pad thing, and you can hook it up to Ableton Lite, which will come with it for free. And you can start layering up beats.
And they don't want to put in the work because it's way easier just to open up their phone and put TikTok on or YouTube Shorts or Instagram and swipe up. Now, you can interpret it any way you want, but in my experience, interest in music is declining. We have young people that work here every day like Tom. Tom, you're what, 27?
Yeah.
It's time to peer pressure the young guy behind his camera into agreeing with him. Very honest response from the guy behind the camera. Fantano, Rick Beato is wrong.
Okay, all right, okay.
Right, just before we get into this, Fantano's collaboration with Mark Rubier.
Fantano gonna work it like that. Fantano gonna work it like this. Fantano gonna do it, baby, give it to me, baby, yo. I'm gonna chop off your penis. Yeah.
Chop
Fantano
off
got
your
it
penis.
Rick Beato, who we have had on the channel before in an interview. I've been a longtime admirer of Rick's work. I'm definitely an acquaintance of the guy. We've had multiple conversations about life and music, and
Ooh, and you're about to start beef with him.
because I feel like one of the major failings of these two pieces of content, especially the first one, is that they are so frigging choppy. They kind of jump from one point to one scene to the next, and a lot of what is being argued.
You mean to different areas of his massive house?
Also, when we're talking about ease of creation here, specifically in regards to Frank Sinatra, I feel like Rick is kind of overlooking the fact that there was a whole system of support behind an artist like Frank, allowing for what he was doing to be as easy as pie, essentially. I mean, for sure, he had to sing well when he was in front of the microphone. That much is true. But Frank also had loads of producers and sound engineers and orchestra musicians.
People are still being creative. People are still making music. It's just through different means. And that means that the outcome is new genres, new sub-genres. You could even argue that genres aren't even a thing anymore because they're all so crossed over with each other. They're all just, there isn't even a Venn diagram anymore. It's just a messy load of circles all overlapping each other.
Rick is kind of quick to assume that current day tech basically streamlines everything about music creation rather than adding more complications actually sometimes. And his key example of that is a drum set, which you could play in any manner that you like, tune in any manner that you like, mic in any manner that you like. Yes, that is true. And while yes, that is time consuming, so is going through 1,000 snare one-shots in Logic.
That also depends on the kind of producer you are, though, because you can be the kind of producer who finds a snare sound that you like and you're like, that'll do. If you're anything like me and you've been producing music for decades at this point, you will have a sample library that's far too vast for you to ever make your way all the way through. So you have to sort of make a decision that one sounds good. Was it you're never gonna find the perfect snare sound. You're just going to find one that you think sounds good. And what you're going to do is you're going to tell yourself, you know what, nobody else is going to listen to this track when it's done and think, you know what, I wish Mooncat would have picked a slightly different snare sound in this track. Nobody's listening to your track and thinking that. Well, I hope so anyway. If you are, fuck you.
Everybody who wants to produce a song has the money for a drum kit or studio time. Things being more difficult does not mean the end result is good. If you want to know how much crap was produced during these time periods, I tell you, go to any Goodwill, any Salvation Army where they might have a record section and see how many trash, dusty, moldy, crappy old albums from the 50s and 60s and 70s that are sitting in those milk crates, sitting in those bins.
Honestly, like the amount of vinyl records, I swear, that have ended up in just landfill, just as waste, is insane. People think that vinyl records are like this treasured thing now. People's old vinyl record collections are mostly, apart from like a few properly rare ones, most of them are just going into landfill because people can't sell them. It was pretty fucking wasteful making music that way, actually pressing it onto vinyl. If we still pressed all music to vinyl in the way that Rick Beato wants all music to be, and all music that's like on Spotify was pressed to vinyl, the amount of fucking waste we'd have when everybody was bored of the music. Yeah, there's bad things about all music being on Spotify these days, but we have to consider that there's a lot of upside to that as well, and the upside is so much less waste. Because the amount of times you probably bought an album on vinyl back in those days and you brought it home and you figured out that actually you didn't like it. It was actually bullshit. You didn't like the album at all, and you probably ended up chucking it in the bin because you didn't like it. That probably ended up happening a hell of a lot. Whereas like if you don't like an album that you found on Spotify, well, you just listen to something different.
I mean, the general argument he's trying to put out here is that kids don't care about music anymore because it's free and they don't need to work a job to be able to pay for a record that they want at the record store that they've been desiring, totally ignoring like the culture of record taping during that time and how, people used to record albums.
You know what I used to do as a kid? I used to use cassette tapes to record my favourite songs off the radio and then play back my own little compilation tapes. You wouldn't cassette tape the radio! By the time that like cable TV came around, I was obsessed with just watching music TV. There was one in the UK called Scuzz. Oh my god, there's got a Wikipedia page. Scuzz was a British 24-hour rock and metal music television channel owned and operated by Sony. It was launched in 2003 and went on to be the highest rated rock TV station. I fucking loved Scuzz. Scuzz, top 100 mega rock classics. Somebody once told me. I'm going to save that playlist for later. After the radio, that's how I started to learn about music, was music TV channels like Scuzz. Back in my day, we used to call it Grebos. I don't know what you guys would, goths, emos. I'd spend a lot of time watching Kerrang and Scuzz and a bit of the Box, but the Box was more like poppy, but they had more pop music on there. But that was how I found music. Things have been like constantly changing,
When it was all about burned CDs. I mean, sure, I bought a lot of CDs. In fact, there were lots of CDs that I spent good, hard-earned fucking money on in my teens that were fucking shit. Meanwhile, fast forward to today, where everybody's just paying $10.99 and streaming everything for free.
Now you just don't have to listen to it again, and you didn't pay anything for it.
There's lots of music out there using the latest technology that is being released every day that is very creative, very experimental, very weird, totally unlike anything that's come before it, but you're not going to hear or find that music if
you know why? It's not just because of the technology either. The people making this music, they've been also inspired by the insane shit that they've been hearing on the internet.
Rick also kind of like brings up the fact that kids don't really seem to want to learn instruments now, or like when he talks to music teachers, they're saying that their students aren't practicing. And I mean, yeah, of course, like you're talking about kids, you're talking about teenagers, like the vast majority of them don't want to practice their instruments. They find it boring. A lot of the best learning that I did on bass guitar was kind of after I stopped doing lessons altogether when I was like 17 or 18.
I never had like proper guitar lessons or bass lessons. I completely self-taught myself guitar because that was the kind of music that I listened to. It was simply the music that I was listening to that I wanted to play. So because I was listening to like punk music and emo music and like even some jazz like Amy Winehouse, I wanted to play what I was hearing, and that wasn't violins and clarinets. That was mostly guitars. That's what made me want to play them. Because that was the music that I was listening to, I didn't need a teacher to like make me play it. I learned through the songs that I loved. I lived on like ultimateguitar.com, reading tabs and just learning how to play my favorite pop punk songs, my favorite Guns N' Roses solos. I fucking loved trying to play solos as well as Slash. I just wanted to play the music that I loved, and that involved guitars, and so I just wanted a guitar, and that was simply it. That's what made me want to do it. It was no teacher at school. It was by listening to the music that I genuinely enjoyed.